Kids in Australia and New Zealand almost learn sun safety before they can walk or talk. With melanomas considered to be Australia's national cancer, summertime is full of media campaigns to slip, slop and slap. But is that making a difference? Well, today we chat to Dermatologist Dr. Kavita Enjeti from the Sydney Adventist Hospital, who specialises in melanoma. Welcome, Dr. Enjeti. Thanks for joining us here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
It's a really, I guess it's a big topic to talk about, and I know it's been spoken about a lot. So I sort of want to start out with, we've had these campaigns for Sun Smart since 1981, basically, but we're seeing a rise in melanomas. What are we doing to sort of not keep up with that? Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, what are we not doing? Thanks, darling. What are we not doing? Thanks, Shona.
Yeah. I think the most important thing to remember is that there's always going to be a bit of a lag. So, you know, melanomas arise, they don't just arise the next day after the sunburn. You know, there's a 20 to 30 years, sometimes even 40, 50-year lag. And so at the moment, yes, our incidence is still going up. You know, compared to 2014, it's probably gone up by about 1,000 new cases every year. But having said that, there is some promising results showing that younger adults, so less than 40, I think the incidence is actually changing. So we are heading in the right direction. I think there's probably going to be a bit of bell curve and hopefully it'll fall back. So
we're seeing a change in the young, because recent statistics were sort of saying they had been on the up, but we're seeing that change a bit?
That's right. That's right. So hopefully, and also I think the survival rates from melanoma are actually improving as well. So even though you've got the diagnosis, hopefully you'll be surviving longer.
Is that because we're looking for them now and we're screening and we're being checked? And
exactly. Right. And there are a lot more modalities coming up now. So there's immunotherapy. So even if you've had, you know, metastatic melanoma where it's gone everywhere, there is potential for treatment now.
Okay, so explain what a melanoma is, because if you look at me, I have lots of spots all over me because I'm very fair.
Yeah.
So what should we look for a melanoma?
So basically a melanoma, it all comes from a melanocyte, which is basically what gives us our colour. Okay, so it produces the colour in our skin. When those melanocytes start behaving abnormally, like with any cancer cells, so they start dividing and they start, you know, just not behaving properly, then we call it a melanoma. Now, the trouble with melanoma cells is that they're quite vigorous, so they don't really sit there and announce, hey, I'm changing, you know, they don't give you signals.
If they just only
change.
would.
Exactly. If only, you know, they're not painful. Sometimes they're itchy or they bleed. But then they silently go into the bloodstream and then travel places. So essentially there are key signals that you have to look out for, perhaps, you know, when you're examining yourself, to try and catch it early. Because I think if we can catch it early, that's still the best cure at this stage. Yeah.
Burning question. So, we are always talking about slip, slop, slap, and you're trying to cover up as much as you can, avoid the sun. But then vitamin D deficiency is also increasing, and you get vitamin D from the sun.
Yes.
I don't know what to do.
I know, and I think that's a really difficult question. You're right. I obviously, from the skin cancer perspective, we know that sun protection is really, really important. You can get vitamin D from other sources, so you can get it from tablets, you can get it from your diet and so forth. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a balancing act, you know. So if you do go out in the sun, you know, a UV index of less than 3, and you can probably get about 10, 15 minutes. And so that's usually outside of the main hours. So between 9 and 3, we try and avoid going out in the sun.
See, it used to be 10 and 2, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, I think it depends on the season.
Right.
Right. So I think in the summer, by the time it's 9 o'clock, it's
you can feel it bite. I feel like I can feel the sun bite more in its sting than I did when I was younger. Is that just me?
About that. No. I think there is it's something to do with our ozone as well. But having said that, kids are not aware at all. You know, they can be outside playing for hours and they don't realise how much sun they've had. So it's probably a combination.
I talk to a lot of mums now who are actually very wary of putting on sun cream because of all the chemicals in them. What do you say to that?
Okay, so in terms of sunscreens, there is a bit of an age. So less than 6 months, we do not recommend that you put on sunscreen on babies. And that is because the skin of babies does tend to absorb a lot more. And yes, sunscreens they've got chemicals and they've got physical barriers as well. So we tend to say keep them, you know, they're not very mobile when they're less than 6 months of age. So you can keep them in places under the shade and keep them covered up. By the time you get to older than that, you know, just try and physically cover as much as possible and then use sunscreen on top of that.
Yeah,
exposed areas.
I was just thinking, one of the things that my husband nags me about, you know, which I think he's right. But it's a cloudy day. Oh, I'll be fine. It's not sunny. I don't feel the sun. Is that?
Look, I think the best thing to do is to check the UV index. So there are lots of sun apps now, and it'll tell you, is it so greater than 3? Yeah, protect. Put sunscreen on, put a hat on, and so forth. Because some days, winter days, it's cooler, but it's
Is that for dark skin and light skin the same?
The thresholds are different.
White here, I'm always having to cover up. I'm with Shona.
I know.
We don't even go outside.
Oh, sun's out, going back in.
So there are different thresholds. But having said that, if you've got slightly darker skin, I think you do end up staying out there a lot longer. And so therefore you are actually exposing yourself in terms of the amount of sun. You're actually getting more sun.
Hold on. Can you just say that again down the barrel of the camera so that my 20-year-old son, who puts coconut oil on, can hear you?
That's right. So, your lifetime exposure is a lot more because you can tolerate it. If you burn the minute you go out, you're going to be so much more cautious and you're going to cover up and you're going to be... So your actually lifetime exposure is going to be less. I mean, yeah, provided you're not the type that keeps wanting to get burnt, it's going to be less, so yes.
How often should we get checked, I guess, with our skin?
I think it very much depends on your family history, your history of exposure to the sun, whether you spend a lot of time outdoors with work or with hobbies and things like that. So there's no set answer. I think over the age of 50, once a year is a good idea, at least to get a baseline, But I start skin checks even in young kids these days.
So should we be taking photos of anything that we're suspicious of?
That's always a good way of keeping track because we can't rely on our memory, and that's the only...
Especially not when you're getting over 50.
So exactly. So that's the only way. And get your partner to have a look at your back or, have a double mirror where you can try and see, because otherwise it's hard.
For the sake of being cautious, what actually is the youngest age you've seen skin cancer present itself in people?
I've had a boy who's been 7 years who's had a melanoma.
7 years old.
So obviously there are other factors at play at that point.
Yeah.
So there isn't a set time period that we need to, say you should start getting checked. But it can start very, very early. So I think as a parent, you've just got to try and see if you can look out at your kids' moles, just get a general idea of where they are, what they're doing, and if they will grow as the child grows, and that's fine. But if they grow out of proportion, if you get 2 or more colours, then, we need to get it checked.
Yeah, the good thing is you've got schools now who are also really conscious and they're putting hats on the kids and making sure that the uniforms are sort of a bit more sun-friendly. And at our school, it's if you don't have a hat, you don't play.
Yes.
That's been around for a long time.
Okay, so I'm showing my age. Oh, look, I think it's a great message. I think it's one that we probably still need to continue to talk about because no one wants to see those numbers rising.
No, that's right. And I think where we perhaps are losing out a little bit is in our high school kids because in the primary school it's enforced. In the high school it's up to the children generally. They leave the responsibility and you've got boys who are, out there playing sports and they forget to put on sunscreen, and the halfway point and cover up and, and wear hats. So...
Well, no, we keep the message going. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing that information. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.